Hi, I'm Sam Meredith. Today, India and China's prime ministers are meeting to talk economics, so we're doing the same with Bharti Bhargava, economist at Forecast. So, Bharti, India wholesale price index inflation has fallen yet again in April and now stands at minus 2.65%. With a steady fall in inflation consistent now for almost the past year, how does this data reflect the overall economic health of the country's economy at this moment?
You're right to point out, Sam, that WPI headline inflation was the lowest since the data on record at 2.65% in April 2015. But having said that, it's not only the WPI inflation, it's also the retail inflation, which is the consumer price index, which came off to 4.87% in April. So overall, it seems that inflationary pressures are coming down, as you can clearly see from the data. But having said that, it is very important to note that the El Nino, the weather conditions that could roll out in India and could trigger food inflation in the coming months, could again sort of trigger the headline inflation, and the inflationary pressures could build up and inflation can take off. Now, apart from the inflation side, speaking a little bit on the growth, so growth numbers, though there is some recovery and the GDP has, really accelerated after the GDP methodology was changed. But the underlying early indicators like non-food credit and motor vehicle sales and cement production, so on and so forth, have really been muted. So, though there's clear signals that things are improving, to really call this a bottoming out in the Indian growth story is something that we are really cautious of doing at the moment. But overall, going forward, we are positive on the Indian growth story, and we believe that as the reforms trickle down in the economy, things are going to improve.
Narendra Modi began his first visit to China as India's Prime Minister today, and with India's economic growth set to overtake that of China's this year, what are you expecting to be a high priority for India during these talks?
Right. I think it's a great question at this point in time, Sam, when things are really slowing down in Europe and, China is not sort of readjusting to its new growth model. I believe that for Indian Prime Minister to be visiting China at this point, the main thing that comes out from this is that these two economies really need to work together, sort out their geopolitical issues, and sort of try and get Asia as a stronger economic bloc that can pull the global economy up and also support the U.S. in sort of, pulling the whole things up after the financial crisis. With that in the background, I believe for India, the most important thing on the agenda for the Indian side would be higher investments, whether it's in terms of Chinese trains or whether it's in terms of having China to help India build up the nuclear power plant capacity, or when you talk about the trade deficit between the two countries. So I think it will be really important for India to sort of increase the IT services exports to China, its pharmaceutical exports to China, and so on and so forth. So this will help narrow down the trade deficit and sort of, maintain the imbalance, sort of, rebalance, bring some rebalance back into the relationship. I think these will be the most important factors. Having said that, I think AIIB, that's the Asia Infrastructure Investment Bank, might be somewhere on the agenda. So the geopolitical factors are big, but I really don't see them playing or, touching upon that factor in this current meet.
Lastly for today, which key indicators will you be looking out for in the short term? Are there any potential surprises in store for us to keep our eyes on?
I think going forward from here, the main focus would be on the April trade data, which is supposed to be out any day between today and the 18th. So I think this will be in the focus, especially after the March trade deficit, widened to more than $11 billion. And apart from that, going towards the end of the month, I think the final quarter GDP print for FY15, that's also the first quarter of 2014, will come into the picture. And immediately after, as the month ends, it's going to be June, and the Reserve Bank of India monetary policy meeting will be on the agenda. And I think the biggest surprise could be, first is the trade data, which, if higher trade deficit, then it's going to pressure the rupee again, which is already at year-to-date highs. And then will be the Reserve Bank of India, because I'm absolutely sure that there's going to be a little ambiguity in what the Reserve Bank will do in June, because a lot of market players will be calling for a rate cut, given that inflation is coming off, as you rightly pointed out in the beginning, and growth is still muted. But again, Reserve Bank of India will be looking at the El Nino and how food inflation could take off and further push up inflation.
Thank you, Bharti. Check back with Dukascopy for more updates throughout the week. Goodbye for now.